From the nation's capital, the McLaughlin Group, an unrehearsed program presenting inside opinions and forecasts on major issues of the day. Sponsored in part by Edison Electric Institute, the Association of Electric Companies, and by Northrop Corporation. Northrop, making advanced technology work. Here's the moderator, John McLaughlin, Washington executive editor of the National Review.
I thought it was just 1 year.
Issue 1, the big C. President Reagan this week had a cancer scare.
There is no evidence in the president's case that this cancer has spread. I think the chances are excellent that this tumor will not recur again. I would certainly think that the president's chances of being completely cured, that is, never again having any evidence of this tumor appear during his normal lifespan, is greater than 50%.
The doctors said that Mr. Reagan's recovery was quote-unquote spectacular, and there was every reason to believe this to be literally true. What effect will this cancer surgery have on Ronald Reagan's presidency? Fred Barnes.
John, it was not a cancer scare. He really did have cancer. Now, I think he's going to bounce back with real vigor and good humor, and he'll be out chopping wood and riding his horse next month in California, and his popularity will go up. But popularity isn't the problem in Ronald Reagan's in his second term. What he needs is a successful legislative strategy. That's not changed at all. The popularity going from 66% to 76% doesn't give him that kind of a strategy that can exploit his popularity.
All right, Fred, we got your point.
I'll give it to you again if you want.
Novak.
John, this may come as a great shock to you, but before this cancer was discovered, the Reagan presidency was going downhill at a frightful pace. It was in severe trouble on all fronts, and the psychological boost this may give it really doesn't solve the basic problems of whether the president is going to get back to Reaganism on foreign policy and domestic policy and solve some of the internal problems in the White House.
Jack Jamon.
Well, the illness caused a little short-term problem because it takes some time away. In the long run, I think it'll have no effect. The notion that enhanced popularity would affect his prospects in the second term is based on a misapprehension about what happened in '81. He did not get his program through because of the favorable reaction to the way he behaved after the assassination. He got it through because people wanted it to work, and there was a majority for it.
Morton Kondracki.
I think that his chances of surviving are better than Dr. Rosenberg said.
Apparently,
Dr.
Kondracki. I'm not.
Dr. McLaughlin School.
It's not me.
You don't mean surviving. You mean that there'll be no reoccurrence.
That's right. Some of the other doctors.
The medical department of Newsweek.
Would you stop? Some of the other doctors say that the chances are in fact 80 to 90% because the cancer was not as pervasive as even Dr. Rosenberg suggested. Now, Reagan is coming back gallantly. I think everybody, he's got the support of the country. As to whether it helps his program or not depends on whether he harnesses his popularity to those programs and goes out and tries to sell them.
There's no indication that he's going to.
But he can.
Wait a minute. What happened last week, Mort? What happened was Reagan couldn't even knock down a filibuster against the line item veto while he was in the hospital at the peak of his popularity.
1984. Wait a minute. Let's go in sequence here. 1984. The president had an examination and a polyp was removed, and the doctors didn't give him a complete examination, and that was a campaign year. Do any of you think that this was due to political mischief?
No, absolutely not, because as many people have observed, Mrs. Reagan wouldn't have allowed that to happen in 100 years.
And furthermore, if they'd had any thought that there was a cancer there, they would have done the examination in December or January, not waited until July.
All right, let me ask you this question, R. Novak, back from Spain, where you were not gored, we're happy to see, I guess, by a bull.
The vote on that was 3-2.
Too bad.
The question has been raised as to whether or not the press is exploring the physical details of this, the anatomical details, with excessive scrutiny. And do we get into a question of Reagan's privacy versus the public right to know, and where do you come down on it?
No, we don't get into that question. Boy, this is deja vu. When I was a much younger person, we went all through this with President Eisenhower's ileitis, which was really a grimy subject, and we went through all this privacy. There's no privacy when a president is concerned, and I don't think the press is.
The benefit of all this is that Ronald Reagan can do for cancer what Dwight Eisenhower did for heart attacks. In the old days, heart attacks used to be you got a heart attack and you had to retire. You were debilitated. And Eisenhower proved that wasn't so, and now people are going to get...
Do you think from here on in the press is going to
to...
allow Ronald Reagan to govern? I mean by that, are they going to continue to expose? He goes out on it for a press conference, he's got a Band-Aid on. Can't you see the series of questions will be asked? You remember what they asked John Kennedy when he had a Band-Aid on? That whole crazy series of questions?
Well, there are, I mean, I see where you're getting in your usual irrational way, but the fact of the matter is there is a legitimate question about the president's health.
Yeah,
and in spite of Dr. Kondraki's...
Can I say...
Wait a minute, in spite of Dr. Kondraki's blessing, we don't know whether the president has really escaped this cancer reoccurring somewhere else, and we're not going to know that for a while. And of course he's going to
Jack,
watch.
do you want to put any limits on the press's inquiry into this matter? Do you want to put any limits on it? Did you see the press conference that was conducted with Dr. Rosenberg?
I thought those were all legitimate questions. He's the
Except they
president of the United
repeated
States.
themselves again and again and again. Rosenberg was addressing the same question repeatedly.
They were exploring the question of whether the president's doctors had done enough to find the cancer in the beginning, and clearly they did not.
Can I intrude with
please.
By the way, I am glad to know that in case I can't get my doctor, I can always go to Kondraki in the future. But the truth of the matter is that Eisenhower delegated so much of his duties that illness really didn't affect him as much as it would another president, and Reagan makes Eisenhower look like a piker in delegation. So what we have is a president who does very little detail work, and that's one of the problems, I think, in this second term. And what we really have that we haven't said is that we have, for the first time, a real prime minister in the United States. And that's the real political development out of this whole illness. We're talking about Don Reagan, the chief of staff. The question is, has he got too much power? He has no constituency. Is he aggrandizing himself? You know, when you saw Don Reagan talking to the businessman and pounding the lectern.
We're going to see that. We're going to see it right on this show. Who are the political beneficiaries of this event?
Well, I don't think there really are any.
George Bush?
Well, no, George
Jack
Bush.
Kemp?
Wait a minute, Jack Kemp.
That's what I say. He's not a beneficiary.
He's not a beneficiary, but George Bush is a loser, and it's because it's the flip side of what Bob was talking about. As Reagan goes up, Bush goes down. Bush should be out in front.
Bush is out in front. He's going to be more out.
He's not out. John,
what rubbish that George Bush is a loser. What absolute rubbish.
No.
John,
See, now, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Hey, Mort, let me make one point. John, I know you love George Bush, but he spent 5 days before he spoke to President Reagan after flying down to be near his...
The story out in Washington that if you'd ever get around, John, you would hear from the politicians is that Don Reagan wanted the vice president up in Kennebunk.
Exactly.
He didn't want him down here.
What about Bob Dole? Is he affected by this? He said some
The
critical
whole idea of winners and losers out of this is nonsense.
You're right.
It presupposes that people are paying a lot more attention to little nuancial details that matter not at all.
Looking ahead, time warp-wise, to 3.5 years from now, as we look back on the Reagan presidency, assuming a total term, will this event appear as a political plus, a political minus, or do you think it will factor out altogether? Bonds be brief.
Do you remember the Carter operation, John?
I don't even remember
That's
that.
right.
I didn't remember Carter.
Well, this one...
Factor out. Okay, Bob.
The same way.
0.
Jack,
No
0.
effect then.
No, if he harnesses his popularity to his program...
You're saying a
he
plus?
is,
said that.
No, wait a minute. He is
He was popular
with,
before.
just quiet, he is dealing with Big C, which has a different resonance in the population. Therefore, it could be a big plus.
All right, 3 zeros, 2 pluses. The pluses have it. We'll be right back.
If you bought electricity in a can, how many 1 kilowatt-hour cans could you get for $1? Around 18 cans. What can $1's worth of electricity do? Light 7 rooms for a week, or play your favorite music, or make a week of meals? Whenever you use electricity, you pay only for what you use, so you really have a lot of control over what you spend, and you only have to buy as much electricity as you need. Electricity, it's the power of choice.
In America, our way of life is protected by a select few. At Northrop Corporation, we never forget that those few depend on the work we do to safeguard the freedoms we all enjoy. Northrop, making advanced technology work for America's defense.
I'll get it done. Every house I build has to be energy efficient. That's what people want. So you better believe there's a lot of choices to make about energy, like an electric heat pump. Today, this baby's one of the most efficient ways to heat and cool a house. Ask folks who own them. A heat pump might be just the thing you and your house need. So do what I do. Talk to your electric company.
Electricity. It's the power of choice.
It was 40 years ago. At Northrop Corporation, we never forget that people still depend on the products we make to safeguard the freedom we enjoy.
Issue 2, elephant hunt. Democrats are hoping to seize the United States Senate from the Republicans in 15 short months. In November of '86, the Republicans will have 22 seats up for election, Democrats 12. Republicans now control the Senate 53 to 47, there being a total of 100 seats, Morton.
That's right, John, you know it.
Let's see now, where are we? We'll start with the 12 Democratic seats that are up and divide them into safe and into unsafe seats. Safe seats are those in which the incumbent will certainly be re-elected and in which his party will certainly retain the seat. Certainty here means that all group members here so concur. An unsafe seat is one where the opposing party may gain a senator. Here are the 4 safe Democratic seats. Connecticut, Christopher Dodd. Hawaii, Daniel Inouye. Kentucky, Wendell Ford. South Carolina, Fritz Hollings. There are 8 Democratic seats that are unsafe. Arkansas, Dale Bumpers. Barnes.
Bumper stays.
Novak.
It's ridiculously safe.
Jamond.
Yeah, exactly.
Kondracki.
Safe.
Who said that the seat was anything but safe?
You
did. 5 stays. Bumper stays. California, Alan Cranston. Barnes.
He's in a lot of trouble, but he stays.
Novak.
All you need is a credible Republican candidate to beat Cranston, but they haven't found him yet.
Jamond.
I think Cranston will be beaten.
Kondracki.
For a change, Novak's right.
McLaughlin says that Cranston stays. 4 stays. 1 goes. Cranston stays. Colorado. Gary Hart. Barnes.
He's not going to run, but it stays Democratic with Congressman Tim Wirth winning.
Novak.
Ditto on what Fred said.
Jamond.
Republicans will take it.
Kondracki.
I think it's a Republican state, and it will go Republican.
McLaughlin says stays. 3 stays. 2 goes. Hart or another Democrat keeps that seat. Illinois. Alan Dixon. Barnes.
Why is he on the list? He's safe.
Again, it's Kondracki. Novak.
Kondracki's folly.
Jamond.
They're safe.
Kondracki.
It's Dixon all the way.
McLaughlin stays. Therefore, 5 stays. Dixon stays. Louisiana. Russell Long, who is vacating the seat. Barnes.
Well, Henson Moore should benefit from disarray among the Democrats and win. So
Nope.
Republican seat it becomes.
Novak.
Yes, but it's not. I go for Moore, but it's going to be a close race, tough race.
Jamond.
No, more relatively easily.
Kondracki.
Moore.
McLaughlin, that goes Republican. Moore, 5 goes long, becomes a Republican seat. Missouri, Thomas Eagleton, who is resigning that seat. Barnes.
Goes Republican with former Governor Kit Bond winning.
Novak.
That's correct.
Jamond.
Very close, though. Harriet Woods is a very strong candidate for the Democrats.
Really? Kondracki.
It's almost a toss-up, but I'll give it to Bond.
It goes to Bond. Therefore, 5 Republican seat. Ohio, John Glenn. Barnes.
John Glenn, is this Kondracki
This is
again?
Kondracki again. He's got a case of the jitters or
Look,
something.
Do a little.
All right, go back.
is-
I like that. Kondracki,
It's safe anyway,
you can
John.
bet your money on John Glenn.
Jamond stays. Kondracki stays. McLaughlin stays. 5 stays. Glenn stays. Kondracki. Vermont, Patrick Leahy. Bonds.
Patrick Leahy stays unless former Governor Richard Snelling's a Republican opponent.
Oh, and what's the likelihood of that?
I think Snelling won't run, so I think Leahy
Well, you're
will
wrong.
stay.
I think Snelling will run. Novak.
Snelling will not run. Leahy stays.
Jamond.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Kondracki.
I agree, too.
Why won't Snelling run?
Because he might
That's
lose.
Snelling.
He's got that great fear that politicians have, fear of losing.
McLaughlin says Leahy stays. That's 5 stays for Leahy. Here are the, coming up, let's talk about the 22 Republican seats that are up. There are 7 Republican seats that are safe. Alaska, Frank Murkowski. Arizona, Barry Goldwater retiring, but Republican Congressman, we all agree John McCain will hold this seat for the GOP. Iowa, Charles Grassley. Kansas, Robert Dole. Nevada, Paul Laxalt. New Hampshire, Warren Rudman. Utah, Jake Gahn. Anybody want to say anything about those all safe seats?
Let me say something about Laxalt.
Yeah.
Now, Laxalt doesn't want to run for re-election, but Republicans want him to, and they've got Nancy Reagan to prevail on him, and so he'll probably run for
Very
re-election.
interesting. There are 15 Republican seats, however, that are unsafe. Alabama, Jeremiah Denton Bonds.
He stays.
Novak.
Admiral Denton's going to have a tough race, but I think he'll stay.
Jamond.
I think he's gone.
You think he's gone? Kondracki.
He's favored, but the economy is very important in Alabama, and also State Senator Don Siegelman is a tough candidate.
He's not
McLaughlin.
a
Secretary of
The
State.
Secretary of State, he's the
Secretary of
weakest
State.
candidate.
McLaughlin says Denton stays.
Siegelman won't even win the primary.
4 stays, 1 goes, Denton stays. Florida, Paula Hawkins Bonds.
No way, she goes.
Novak.
She cannot do what Jesse Helms did.
Jamond.
Now, that'll turn Democratic.
Kondracki.
The polls are right now 58-29, Bob Graham.
McLaughlin says she goes. 5 goes. Sorry, Paula. Hawkins goes. Georgia, Mac Mattingly Bonds.
He's the luckiest man in politics because the Democrats do not have a good candidate against him. He stays.
Novak.
The football coach, Vince Dooley, is the prime Democratic candidate. That shows the trouble Democrats are in.
Jamond.
Dooley will beat him. He's very strong.
Kondracki.
Mattingly.
McLaughlin says Mattingly stays. 3 stays, 2 goes. Mattingly stays. Idaho, Steve Sims Bonds.
I'm afraid he's going to go. Governor John Evans is running against him and is very strong.
Novak.
These governors always look stronger at this time. I think Sims will nose them out.
Jamond.
Right now, Sims.
Kondracki.
Nope.
McLaughlin says stays. 3 stays, 2 goes. Sims stays. Indiana, Dan Quayle Bonds.
Is this Kondracki
This is
again?
Kondracki again.
Say, Quayle is safe.
Novak.
He is safer than safe.
Jamond.
Safe. No.
Kondracki.
I'm just being conservative for a change.
All
He's
right.
safe. He's
McLaughlin
safe.
says stays. Therefore, Quayle 5 stays, 0 goes. Quayle stays. Maryland, Charles Mathias Bonds.
Here is an interesting race. He may not run, and if he doesn't, there will be pressure on Gene Kirkpatrick to run in his place.
So what do you say?
If he does run, he may have a primary challenger, and
So if he runs,
and Harry Hughes, the governor,
where
will
do you
run
come
against
down?
him.
Where do you come down?
I think he stays.
Okay, Novak.
I think he's going to run, and I think he's going to get beat by Governor Harry Hughes and fairly easily.
Wow, Jamond.
I agree with that.
Really? Kondracki.
No, in that race, Mathias will stay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kondracki. Therefore, we come up with 3 stays for Mac Mathias. 2 goes. Mathias stays. New York, Alphonse D'Amato. Barnes.
He's the greatest pork barrel politician in America, and he will beat Geraldine Ferraro.
Novak.
But not by as much as the polls say.
But he stays.
Yes.
Jamond.
I think D'Amato's going to be beaten.
Wow. Kondracki.
I don't think Ferraro can beat D'Amato.
Stays. McLaughlin stays. 4 stays. Sorry, Jack. 1 goes. D'Amato stays. North Carolina, John East Barnes.
He's hopeless. He probably won't run for re-election, and that seat's going to go Democratic.
Novak.
I don't think it's hopeless, but I think it is going to go Democratic.
Jamond.
Yeah, Democratic.
Kondracki.
Democratic.
McLaughlin, 5 Democratic. On the side of it's going Democratic. North Dakota, Mark Andrews. Bonds.
He's in a lot of trouble, particularly if Byron Dorgan, the congressman, runs, who's 25 points ahead in a poll. I think Andrews goes.
Novak.
Dorgan is not going to run, and Andrews stays.
Jamond.
Yeah, Barnes is 3 weeks out of date, or 3 months out of date. in that
3 months
poll.
out of date.
Kondracki. Hurry up, Mark.
Yep, stays.
McLaughlin says goes. 3 stays, 2 goes. Andrews stays. Oklahoma, Don Nichols. Bonds.
Gee, that's a good one. He stays.
Novak.
He's an easy one.
Jamond.
That stays.
Kondracki.
Stays.
Stays. McLaughlin stays. 5 stays. Nichols
We'll put him
stays.
in there.
You switched on that, Mort. Didn't you?
He may have a good opponent.
Oregon, Bob Packwood. Quickly, Barnes.
Kondracki again. He's
Yeah.
safe.
Novak.
Cinch.
Jamond.
Safe.
Kondracki.
Safe.
McLaughlin stays. 5 stays. Packwood stays. There you are, Bob. Pennsylvania, Alan Specter. Barnes.
He's in a very tough race, but he stays.
Novak.
I think it's going to be a tough race. The conservatives are going to cut him terrifically. They're going to support Don Bailey, the Democrat, if he runs against him, but he'll stay.
John Lehman going to run against him?
No.
Jamond.
Specter stays.
Kondracki.
Specter stays, but narrowly.
McLaughlin says stays. Specter stays by 5. We are now in South Dakota. James Abner. Bonds.
He's dead.
Wow. Novak.
Congressman Tom Daschle.
Novak.
Exactly right, and he's going to have primary trouble from Governor Janklow.
Jamond.
Yeah.
Kondracki.
Farm crisis, he goes.
McLaughlin. 5 goes. Bye-bye, baby, for Abner. Washington. Slade Gorton. Barnes.
He should win easily, even over Brock Adams.
Novak.
One of the great tax increasers of America stays.
Jamond. Jamond.
Yeah, Gordon safe.
Kondracki.
Yeah, he stays.
McLaughlin says stays. 2 5 stays. Gorton stays. Wisconsin. Robert Kasten. Barnes.
He's going to have a tough race, but Governor
Tough
Earl...
race.
Yeah,
Who's going to give him a tough race?
Governor Earl might run, probably won't, but I think Kasten stays.
Yeah, no tough race. Novak.
Castro may be lucky enough to run against Ed Garvey, the old athletic union fellow, but it's not going to be a landslide, John. He'll stay, but he'll be close.
Caston's all right, but Tony Earl will give him a real problem.
Kondracki.
I agree with that, but I think Kasten will stay.
5 stays for Robert Kasten. Barnes, Novak, Jamond, Kondracki. There you see before you on the screen your tallies. Can we have the tallies here? You heard it here first. Take note of the fact that Jaman, not unsurprisingly, is the most cruel on the GOP candidates, and
also on the Democrats.
And also on the Democrats, true. And Kondracki is less cruel only by one. The final tally, if we may see that, U.S. Senate, there you are. Democrats now hold 47 seats, Republicans 53. In 1986, however, the Democrats will hold 48 seats and the Republicans 52. The Republicans, note, retain the United States Senate.
You should
Closing
note,
remark?
You should note, John, that three of us predicted that the end result would be a 50-50 tie in the United States Senate after 1986.
Which means George Bush becomes important.
Issue
his vote would
3.
give the leadership.
Issue 3. You want to say anything else on the tally?
Go ahead.
Mission impasse. Got that, Jack? The Republican Senate and the Democratic House began conferring on a federal budget on June the 11th. 4 weeks later, that first round of talks ended in impasse and failure. A second round began this past Monday, and that round collapsed 3 days later in a session charged with anger and charged with acrimony.
I'd encourage the Senate, if they could, to go, you know, and sit down and think together, and if you find ours deficient, bring us one that
don't preach to us.
Sometimes the best preaching is done from knowledge of one's own sins.
I don't think that I see a way. We'll call you back as soon as we have something to talk about. We're in recess.
We must cut federal spending. They're afraid to come to grips with it, and I challenge them to do it.
Spoken like a true Marine. Will any agreement be reached this summer on spending for fiscal 1986 more ton?
I don't think so. I used to think there was a deal there to be had, but there's one possibility, and that is, as I said before, if Ronald Reagan steps into this dilemma and presents a compromise proposal that they all can accept. But I don't think that he can do it without, and he's pledged against
what kind of a compromise?
Increasing taxes.
Oh, wow! Ooh, a third tank job for Reagan.
A gasoline tax with oil prices falling could make up the difference.
Jack, ask him what he's been smoking.
You don't see that.
You must be getting his device in the medical section.
I don't think there's any chance of a deal this summer. I think there still is a chance of a deal this fall, but it requires Don Regan to play an intelligent role rather than going around and getting above himself by pounding the table, which is not his function as a functionary in the White House.
But you don't understand. I think that's an important point. Just as a brief interjection, he is acting as Prime Minister, and he thinks he's acting as Prime Minister.
I know it, and the people in the Senate don't like that one little bit.
Wait a minute. I hate to jump in and attack Bob Dole because I know some of the reporters around here will go bonkers, probably you.
I will too,
but look,
I'll defend him.
Quickly.
Look, the fundamental mistake was made by Bob Dole and the Senate Republicans in going for Social Security cuts without making 2 phone calls first, to Tip O'Neill and to Bob Michael.
Right.
You have to prearrange any cut in Social Security.
The other problem was trusting the president.
Wait a minute, they didn't do it. Ask Jim Baker, he'll tell you.
Can I just
Bob, let me finish. One more thing. What he allowed House Democrats to do was to change the issue from who's going to cut domestic spending to who's going to save Social Security. They stepped on the high moral ground.
The point is that there is about $7.9 billion in spending difference between the House and the Senate that Don Regan is pounding the table over. It's insignificant. What is really at stake is that you have an ego trip by Domenici, an ego trip by the Republican senators, and they are furious with the White House. They are furious with the House Republicans who want to save themselves by neither cutting Social Security nor increasing
We got to
taxes.
get out right now. Question, quickly, briefly, one word. Democrats or Republicans, who is the more to blame for this budget impasse? You.
Republicans.
Bob.
No question, Republicans.
Jack.
The White House.
The White House.
That's 3
Republicans.
words.
No, it's both. It's absolutely
Equally both?
Absolutely.
4 Republicans, 1 equally both. We'll be right back with predictions.
In America, our way of life is protected by a select few. At Northrop Corporation, we never forget that those few depend on the work we do to safeguard the freedoms we all enjoy. Northrop, making advanced technology work for America's defense.
Electricity not only works for people, electricity puts people to work.
shortcut on the mountain.
Electricity, the heartbeat that keeps America going.
It was 40 years ago. At Northrop Corporation, we never forget that people still depend on the products we make to safeguard the freedom we enjoy.
We are all afraid of the dark, and with good reason. More than 15 million crimes a year are committed in the dark. That's why communities all across the country are now fighting crime with light. They chose the high-efficiency street lamp, which operates on 11 cents worth of electricity a night. Electricity. What else gives us so much for so little? It's the power of choice.
Predictions, Frederick Barnes.
Amazingly, Mort was correct last week in saying that the conservatives would block Julia Block as the nominee for the Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights. Of course, Mort didn't tell you who's going to get that job. The person who's going to get it is White House aide Doug Holliday, and he's a brilliant choice.
Robert Novak.
John, from his hospital bed, the president will call for a reconvened conference on the budget, and they will come up, Mort, with a budget this summer.
Before they go on vacation for August. Jack.
As long as we're doing the long-range crystal ball, although the Republicans are going to lose, by my guess, 3 Senate seats, they will probably gain a net of 6 or 7 governorships in 1986.
That means 42, 43 governors? Oh,
no,
see.
No,
that
the
means,
Republicans will gain.
I see. That means 20, 21, 22. Go ahead.
President Lee is coming next week, of course. Everybody knows that. But
Lee,
the
Confederacy?
China?
Okay.
PRC?
Confederacy?
Quickly.
And the outcome is going to be that they're finally going to sign the nuclear agreement that's long delayed. And your friend George Bush, your friend George Bush will be on his way to China.
In round 3 of the Geneva arms talks, there will be movement. The Russians will surrender their ban on SDI research, and we will see, in connection with the meeting or the summit, some movement. I'm John McLaughlin saying bye-bye.
The McLaughlin Group has been sponsored in part by Edison Electric Institute, the Association of Electric Companies, and by Northrop Corporation. Northrop, making advanced technology work. Topics are selected by Mr. McLaughlin, and the opinions expressed are solely those of the participants.
I'm John McLaughlin. Join me on One-on-One with U.S. Trade Representative Clayton Yaita, discussing protectionism in politics, protectionism in national security, Sunday morning at 11.